Hello everyone, I am back today with a review of the third studio album by Swedish artist iamamiwhoami, her real name being Jonna Lee. This is again another collaboration with Claes Bjorklund that she has worked on as a collaborator and as a part of this art project. This is the third full-length studio album titled Blue. It was released officially on November 7th of 2014. However, this album was teased for almost a year before that. All throughout 2014, she released another video as like a teaser, to lead up to the album release. And I think by the time the album came out, only 2 videos had yet to be released for the last 2 songs on this record. And of course, it was released off of her label, To Whom It May Concern. Blue is a very different record from her first 2, which I have reviewed on this channel, Bounty and Kin, so I'm going to link those reviews in the description. I am wearing light blue today because this color is so emblematic, particularly this shade of blue, I feel, for this record. And for me, Blue is a really interesting record. I think Blue is her most accessible record for sure. And of course, I've also reviewed now her latest album as a solo artist, Jonna Lee, Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten, which I'll also link in the description. And I still think that Blue is a little bit more accessible than even Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten, though it's a little bit closer. You can sense that there has been a progression or a change in the sound and the little bit more 80s pop, synth pop layering aesthetics that are imbued into her music. Her earlier records are darker and a little bit more unpredictable. And, I've read a lot of mixed reviews for Blue saying, that's the thing that made them special. Blue is a little bit too lackluster in that it's a little too simplified. It's nice synth pop beats, but it's not much more than that. And especially if you just listen to the music without the gorgeous visuals accompanied, they don't really hold up. Now, I disagree with that. I think that this album still stands on its own 2 feet beautifully as a sonic piece of work, not just with the amazing visuals. But of course, I can't just talk about the music here. I have to talk about the visuals, as they are doing a lot of the heavy lifting for this story and for this concept, and they are the most immaculately filmed yet of her to do. I mean, especially if you compare it to even her most recent visual film for Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten, Blue is her most sweeping and cinematic. I will say this, I don't know how she suddenly got such a huge budget for her videos, but it's like night and day compared to Kin or Bounty. She is, doing all of these amazing drone shots. They're incorporating all of these vistas. It's so cinematic. It's so high definition. It is a sight to behold, and everything is so well edited. The videos play like this dreamscape, and it's very much imbued with the natural surroundings. It's not so much, an art installation, so to speak, and it's Jonna in all of these natural environments. She's always been in natural environments, and nature has always been a really important role in the visuals and, of course, in the music and the lyrics. But this time, the nature really feels like it's taking center stage, and I love that. I love all of the exotic locations that were filmed for this video. It looks like they went to possibly like the Arctic Circle, maybe like Svalbard or northern Norway for some of these glacial kind of coastlines and Arctic landscapes. So many beaches, so many ocean shots. We get every single shade of blue that you can see in water, possibly. I mean, no wonder the album is called Blue. Films in the Caribbean, and then she also films in Scandinavia in the forests as well. It is just a visual treat, and I really love that about the record. I just rewatched it for like the 3rd time fully, even though several of the videos I've seen way more than that, the other night, and I'm in awe at the visual splendor of this record. Now, I'm going to talk about the visuals and sort of the story arc that I'm getting from it, because again, it's very much up to interpretation. She doesn't like to explain too much, but I'm going to first go through and talk about the songs, and then I'll go through and talk more about the visuals and what I like the most about that. So let's start with the music. The music for this record, as I said, it is very much more accessible synth pop. There's definitely an 80s feel to it, and that's something that you get in tons of this kind of music, and that's fine. The alternative electronica is still there. Jonna's eerie sort of Cocteau Twins vocals are still there, if not possibly a little bit more processed. There is definitely there are songs that really rise to the occasion, and then there are songs that for me maybe feel a little bit bogged down, and I will go into that. I ultimately do believe that this record is a highlight record for her. I love all of her records, and it's really hard for me to say, like, I like Blue more than Bounty, or I like Kin more than both of them. Because honestly, at first, there were records that I was like, oh, I like them a lot more. Like, at first, I was like, I love Bounty. Then I was like, I love Blue. I don't really like Kin. Well, now I disagree on all of that. I think they're all phenomenal, but for different reasons. And so, in some cases, other albums rise to the occasion more and succeed in other ways. There is something about the sort of darker, murkier, unpredictable undertones of Bounty and of Kin that is a little bit missing. I do agree that the music doesn't feel quite as anxious. It doesn't feel quite as experimental as it used to. And I can see why some music reviewers were possibly a little bit displeased. It does seem like she's chasing pop just a little bit more, especially on songs like Blue Blue or Chasing Kites. These are like huge anthemic pop songs that could easily been sung by someone else, but of course they're so Yona at the same time. They're so fitting of the aesthetic. I wouldn't have it any other way, but I can see why some people might consider it because they're too hipster, to like pop music. They're like, this is too pop. I don't like it. Well, you know what? They need to get off their anti-mainstream high horse because not everything has to be anti-pop, okay? Catchy hooks are a thing and you cannot deny them, okay? I do like that Yona really embraces the choral elements of her voice on this record. So on so many of the songs, her voice is layered over many times to give a real choral aesthetic, something we see more on her not her self-titled, but her newly released album, Everyone Afraid. Because I think that that's something that's missing so much on the earlier records. There on moments like Chasing Kites, where we have this choral swell, or on Blue Blue, or on Vista, we get all of those vocals coming together. Hunting for Pearls, another highlight. Let's talk about One by One. Fountain. Eerie, beautiful atmospheric track. There's a little bit of that ambient, but it's not so electronic. It's just there, and it's just, I literally feel like Fountain is literally molded to fit the landscape. It's sparse and eerie to show this kind of expanse of the ocean. And then the moments where the chorus really builds up, which I must admit, it had to grow on me. I wasn't crazy about the chorus. I felt like it was a little bit too... The tempo switch up I thought was a little bit jarring. It starts out so smooth and like this one kind of tempo as she's singing, and then it's all of a sudden da 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 da, and it's like, whoa, why are we so upbeat all of a sudden? It took a minute to adjust to it, but now I'm used to it, and it does feel like a geyser shooting up out of nowhere, unpredictably. It has some of my favorite lyrics on this record in this song. What lies beyond the fringe of the woods, dust to dust, so we leave for good. When all has gone to blazes, I start to run, until I find places where nobody's gone. No more weight on your conscience. With ease I go back to the start. Surge like a fountain, like tide, and swallow the bleed. I love that. Flows like a fountain inside. Gather force from the sea. Riding this giant wave untied. Let it wash me clean. Surrender to the primal ebb and flow of nature and reality and the sort of primal instincts that we have within us. It's a reset button. And I feel that with this song. It feels very much like an opening song. It feels like the beginning of a story. And I feel like if you were to place all of iamami's music into chronological order, maybe this song would be towards the beginning, maybe the beginning song, I'm not sure. But it definitely feels like back to the water, back to where we all came from. And I love this sort of eerie prologue feel that it has. I don't know how else to describe it. Hunting for Pearls, another euphoric, blissful moment on this record. And again, very distinct chorus verse change up. It starts out very off-putting, very unsure of itself. It actually reminds me a lot of Kin in the melody during the verses. With this sort of splattering, sort of electronic unsuredness. But then it goes into this most euphoric, cathartic, choral, melting pot of sound for the actual, bulk of the song. And it is so refreshing. Deep blue diver with their hopes in their hands. Won't you take me with you to another land? Pure sapphire hiding in the sands. All the darkest depths that are known to man. In the strangest lands I will grasp my chance, sing the unsung ways I have searched through space. And I shackle myself, I risk it all, bringing us closer to the core, returning treasures to the shore. This song, along with the visuals, definitely feels like hunting for glimmers of light, for beauty in the murky depths. It's hard to talk about these songs without talking about the visuals, even though I want to do that as a separate thing, because the visuals are very much tied into this sort of way I view it since I've seen them both at the same time. I feel though, Hunting for Pearls, like I said, there's this ecstasy about it. I wrote down when I was watching this film, like things that came to my head, just pure joy at the chorus. Um, I love the way she sings into the pre-chorus leading into the chorus, just like, and the unsung ways. I always thought it was unsung words, but I have searched through space. It feels like an orgasmic kind of a cathartic moment for her. And again, tying it into the visuals, you know, I mean, I guess I have to just mention, like, I see this as like this frenzied sort of like, I'm unsure of myself and the fans are closing in around me and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to deliver. But in these moments where I dive into the unknown, I find these pearls, I find these gems, and it's this beautiful thing. So it's the song is such light and dark contrasted beautifully. I just I don't know. It's really hard to describe sonically these songs, but I just find it so rewarding. The next track, Vista, this is another very fulfilling synth-laden track that is very anthemic. This song definitely feels like it is opening up to the vast vista or expanse that this song is about. The visuals lead you to believe it to be about. Stretching out before my eyes are liches who rule loud and wise. I don't know what liches are. Not leeches. Regal shimmer, blinding shine, but law alone is belong. Who says bye? All the shallow rifts I have to wade. This could have become my darkest hour. Enough are days of living in the shade. I see how to occlude. Is it underneath or on the vista? Hide my land of frozen soil. That's why some despair through looking at mine. Boy, none of these lyrics rhyme, do they? This is very rich songwriting. Very layered and textured. A lot to dive into. I love the poetic allusions to water that she uses again, all the shallow riffs I have to wade. Can you taste the pale white salts against your tongue? All these allusions to ocean, to the vista, to the opening up, the harbor. The next track, Tap Your Glass. This is a very different song, and I think it doesn't really fit with the rest of the album sonically so much, which is kind of interesting about it. It's definitely a little bit more off-putting. It's a little bit different rhythm and melody change up. There's some vocalizations. She does that shala. She does that in a lot of her songs, actually, and it's this sort of ad-lib that fits in with the lyrics to help with the rhythm. But it sort of is like this commanding tap your glass, make a rhythm out of nothing kind of song. It's not my favorite on this record. Tap your glass, let us see you unfold. Shall I tap my glass and give it my all? We could tap our glasses, let ourselves go now. Tap my glass, she says tap my glass quite a lot. Raise my voice to call upon your attention as it fills to the verge when full. It begs them for us, all suspension. Draw breath and let ourselves go through the dark veils, rolling floors, and feel the salt slowly fill your throat. Obviously, the glass is alluding to these glass bottles where in the visuals she's putting all these messages. Again, I'm going to talk more about the visuals in a minute, but that's where that comes from. But the glass could also symbolize something more than that, obviously, as everything is open and ambiguous, of course. But through all of the different forms this song goes through, it transforms itself in many forms as the song, you know, you don't really know where it's going, but there is something very rhythmic about it. That's the biggest thing I get from it. It's not the most memorable melody, though. Blue Blue, on the other hand, is like completely the opposite of Tap Your Glass, because Blue Blue is so much more about like soothing and being relaxed and chilled, and it's very fulfilling, I think, chorus-wise. Blue Blue is the title song really for this record, and it carries this cathartic ecstasy. Very much so. Again, I don't think people really saw this coming from her, you know? To make an album that is so feel-good to some extent, when so much brooding kind of darkness to her music, and obviously confusion, and to make something about just, I feel blue, and the ocean is blue, and I'm in the palm trees dancing on the beach, it seems kind of, I don't want to say one-dimensional because it's not, but it seems so carefree, and that's not something we're used to seeing so much with her music. There is still a melancholic edge to the melody and sound of this song. In the blackened waters of conceit, I saw my silhouette pale and bleached, all thin outlines and no shape. Dash the surface for the self to show, displays a vague shadow I should know. Unless you define me, there's no faith. Continue the line I draw, fill in the missing mark. Without you, I am who? There she's going to tying it all back to her very strange concert name. Build me up all nice and tall, lift me up and make me soar. Out of the blue, blue, I'll be new. I love that line, continue the line I draw. Continue the rest of the story. Let me start something for you and then build something out of nothing. This song is very much, again, I think, emblematic of her career and the sort of spontaneity of it and the building everything out of nothing and then letting the fans kind of continue the story and then pulling energy back from the fans. It's a beautiful, blissful moment on this record, and it definitely has that propelling synth that definitely feels very 80s throwback. I can't help but think of Cherish by Madonna, more so with the visuals, but I get a little bit of that. Like, if this is sort of Am I's Cherish moment on this in her career, this is that sort of sweet melody that you can't get enough of, that fills you with that feeling of the seaside, and it's romantic, and it's melancholic, it's all of these things at once. I have to say, although I know some people like Thin because it's, again, like I said, very different from the other songs, I think Thin and Tap Your Glass, this is the next song on this record, are very different. They're sort of like the two songs on this record that want to sort of be like its own little darker version of themselves. And I think that that's fine, but for me, Thin doesn't really do very much. I've listened to it only a few times, though, I have to admit, just because the melody doesn't grab me at first. Again, very distinct, and it feels a little bit something like I think Kin would be a good example album that this song would fit well on. So I think of this as sort of like throwing back to that era a little bit. And it grows on you for sure. Chasing Kites, I've already mentioned this. This is one of my favorite songs on this record. It is just so anthemic. I love the visuals of her on the lighthouse. I mean, this song, it feels like you need to have a lighthouse to listen to because it definitely feels like a song that's like beckoning you towards the light. It's triumphant. And it's a triumphant moment where you do feel like there's been so much darkness in her music. You really do get this feeling of like the positivity is here for the first time. And that is a very kind of unique feeling that I didn't really realize until I listened to all the rest of her catalog, how this song signals this shift. The chords are just so positive. It's a thin, thin line, and I walk both sides of it. See the other side appear so tempting, worth dying for it. And your dreams waking out of one, absorbing your every thought, worth risking it all for working its wonders, and now for you. Under the ocean outcast with nowhere to go, a brighter forecast where new winds will blow. A storm is drawing near, come meet me when it's cleared. Waste my youth chasing kites. I know it'll blow out of my hand. It's a very wise lyric. Be aware of the transience of life and don't get too caught up in things that can easily blow away. And then, of course, also let the storm run its course. I'm going to be there when it's over. This song feels like the storm has passed. This is that breakthrough of the clouds kind of moment on this record. Then we have Ripple. Oh my gosh. And now I can't divorce the music video element from the visuals, so I only will ever see these, dressed in black people doing all these cool dances in the water. But this song definitely feels like a really fun song to dance to. It's one of the more electronic moments on the record, sort of like In Due Order from Kin. I feel like this is the In Due Order of Blue. Where it's like this kind of goofy, off-guard electronic dance that you just want to do and have fun. And the rhythm is so alluring. And I think that Ripple is just that, and it's still kind of cathartic and fun. And so I think the video and visuals are harder to not talk about because it's just like, oh, the dancing, the way she makes it look like these characters are literally like fountains coming out of the water. I mean, the way they dance and choreographed, it's so beautiful. I'm going to talk about it all in 1 second. I just really love it. The Last Dancer. So if anything, I feel like the last two songs on this record really tie into this sort of emotional solitude that I think her music is coming from. The Last Dancer is this very heart it's at the same time heart-filling and heart-wrenching sort of despondent cry. I really can hear this pain in her voice as she sings "The light has gone from this room." And I love the rhythmic, kind of big, sweeping sound this song has. "Their life has gone from this room. There is no future for me. There was dancing, and the mood shifted from tender to a lifeless beat. Needless happy as in June, when this battle stained the white with bleeding. I will not be equal to the fool who cherishes her own misdeed. Look at the stars in the winter sky. Everything will bleed tonight. What a beautiful day to die." It's a very melancholic and mournful song, and yet at the same time, in the chorus, she shifts it to a little bit more of an uplifting melody, but she's singing "What a beautiful way to die." It has this sort of giving up feel. Like, I've tried everything and now I've returned to the forest where I belong, and I don't really care anymore. You know, like I'm surrendering to my demons. And again, if you follow the visuals, it very much is what kind of this song is alluring to. It leads into the beautiful, haunting song Shadowshow, which was actually hinted at way back in their 2011 live show that they did for Bounty, where she sings it on the piano. Shadowshow was one of the first I Am, Am I, Who Am I videos and visuals that I ever saw of hers online. And this song is just badass. I just love everything about it. The synths, the production, the eeriness, the off-putting layering. Oh my god, it's just everything. The vocal manipulations. Oh my gosh. And it has just such an anthemic chorus. Song is twisted in all the right ways. I am fire, I am damaged in the making. I am an army set out to control your every ticking. I am a giant stepping on the tiny world you're living in, we solve. And you shake and you shiver as the roof is coming down, and the walls grow thinner. Shadows show, darkens the river, turns heart into stone. We run, terrified, what have you done? This is how it goes. I'm surrendering to my darkness. That's all I can really get from this song. And sort of this intrinsic darkness that is in all of us. Shadows show at the end of the day. The shadows lengthen. It always will happen. Every day has its night. And she says in the lyrics, "Can you solve the riddle?" It is this riddle of life. It is this sort of yin and yang that she's balancing on these songs. And I think it's just so primal. It's so primeval and ethereal and just out of this world, and I love it. And so now tying this all into the visuals, the way I interpret it, in the first video, and to some extent the second, Hunting for Pearls, she, can be seen hiding and running from these monsters that are dressed as these people all in black. A lot of people have speculated that these are like fans of hers, because at parts they seem to be imitating the dance moves that she does in her shows, which I think is really cute. They do this again in Vista. And so, she's diving into the waters. She's trying to elude them. They're trying to grab at her. At the end of Hunting for Pearls, they pull up a fishing net and all it has is pieces of ice, like remnants of her. They can't quite get to her. She's elusive. She's trying to create art, but the fans are constantly at every corner and surrounding her, and there's this anxiety. And then she starts really getting into like the bulk of creating the album. So that's her placing all the song lyrics into these bottles and setting them out into the ocean. And in doing so, she's getting the closest into actually connecting with the fans. And so in Blue Blue, it's like this almost peaceful union between the two, her and the fans, or these monsters. And then in Chasing Kites, she is, getting to a point where the album is coming together, or the whole story arc is coming together. We see her process more. She's at the typewriter. All these lyrics are posted around her lighthouse. The lighthouse is sort of this emblem or symbol of coming home, returning ships back to safety after being out on the sea. And so she is calling herself back home to many ways, I think. And I think this is beckoning her to come back to the forests. I really do feel like Chasing Kites is sort of that moment where she's finally given all of the music out, and in Ripple, the fans are reacting to it. They're dancing in the shows, and they're sort of, it's sort of funny, at one point it's like call and response, Yana's in the boat and she's like doing certain motions and the fans are mimicking her. And so you get that like cult worship sort of thing that she's sort of poking fun at a little bit. And I think The Last Dancer is sort of that moment when the show is done and the curtains come back and she's back in the forest in Sweden and she's like, where's the continuity? I do all these things, I create these products, these black boxes, these albums, and I put them out, and then where am I personally, anymore? Again, this is just how I'm interpreting the narrative of this album visually. And so she, she feels the depression of it. This is a depressing melody. She goes back to the forest to sort of just be, and in doing so, and looking at herself and sort of tuning back in with her personal life, and then in doing so, she punches the mirror. She says, enough of this. I'm going to succumb to my darkness. And that's where I am I, who am I came from ultimately. And so she, in the night, comes back to this primal being who ultimately controls all of the shadows around her. And when she finally, as the shadow monster to some extent, wearing all these mirrors in the forest, which is very symbolic, she finally is able to make the actual monsters drown themselves in the water. She has control over them now. And so it's a very dark, kind of subverting kind of story. I think that Curly was definitely inspired a lot by the Shadowshow music video for her song and visual for Feral Hearts. I didn't know of Am I Who Am I at the time that that was released, but now I can see, since this did come first, I think Curly was highly influenced by the mirrors in the forest, because Shadowshow and The Last Dancer feel very much like something that Feral Hearts was taking inspiration from. Not a ripoff, not a ripoff. No one owns the idea of putting a mirror in the forest, but there's definitely homage there. So that's just sort of what I'm pulling from this story. It is very much a relationship with the fans. Kin was so much about, again, this experimental product that she was trying to make. Whereas with Bounty, it wasn't even sure what it was going to be. I mean, the album wasn't even released for 3 years. It was this whole thing. Kin was so structured. Okay, I'm going to put out an album. I'm going to release the video every 2 weeks. And now Blue is sort of this journey that's been fan-generated, that is just sort of, again, very much about her personal struggle to create while also wanting to satisfy her fan base, who wants her to be this enigmatic creature who is aloof and inaccessible, but at the same time, that makes it hard for her to put her own life and personal feelings into her records. And that's why I think her coming to Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten was a really important step for her, because it was a little bit more her. Not to say that she wasn't a part of Am I, Who Am I, but she needed to be a little bit more direct, I think, in her lyrics, and you can see that. In Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten, her lyrics are a lot more direct. They're a lot more, I am blah, blah, blah. They're a lot more, this is how I feel, and it's a little bit easier to discern possibly who she's aiming at, what she's talking about, though the lyrics are still as beautiful and poetic as ever. Whereas I think the lyrics are some of the most difficult to discern and decipher as ever on Blue. And I think that sometimes maybe the lyrics do suffer a little bit because the melodies are so addicting and beautiful that I don't really pay too much attention to the lyrics. And then it's always a little hard to decipher them anyway because of the way she sings and the way it's muffled into the production. I do feel like the lyrics sometimes take a little bit of a back seat on this record. But when you dive into it, it's very rewarding. And this album is its celebration, and it's also lamentation at the same time. I don't know how else to describe it. It's surprising how colorful this record is. It's surprising how euphoric it can be at times, because we're used to something that is so much more grimy. But the grime is still there. These are still very kind of schizophrenic electronic beats propelling these songs. And ultimately, I think it's quite a rewarding journey. Let me know, you guys, in the comments. Again, I love reading about people, what they think of the interpretation of the visuals and the songs. Let me know what you think of this record. It is definitely a wonderful one that I've had on repeat for quite some time now, only just a few months since I've discovered her music. And this means I have now reviewed all of her albums up to date, which means now I want to talk about her in concerts, because I've only seen one of them. I haven't seen in concert, Blue in concert yet from 2015, so I will watch that. But the next video I do on Am I, Who Am I is going to be talking about her in concert visual that she did in 2011 in Sweden. because I don't normally talk about live performances up on this channel, but I feel like that was its own art project in itself, and I need to talk about it. I have a lot to say. It just blew my mind. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you did. And like I said, if you're new here, check out all my other I reviews, plus a lot of other artists. So please check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.